meet here after 7 years in Guyana, when Guyana hosted the CARICAD board meeting. After a hiatus of about 3-4 years, we gathered again to discuss the affairs of CARICAD, CARICAD being the Caribbean Center for Administration Development. We have distinguished brothers and sisters from the Caribbean here with us. And I do trust that these deliberations will take us forward as we manage the affairs of the Caribbean Public Services. In this celebratory year, we welcome these guests to our shores. In a country where the good life beckons, a country unique in its position on the world map, the only English-speaking country in the Caribbean, as we are bordered by Suriname to the east, Venezuela to the west, Brazil to the north, to the south, and the mighty Atlantic Ocean to the north. In the capital city of Georgetown, where at one time we boast of having the tallest wooden building in the world, the St. George's Cathedral. That very cathedral tomorrow will celebrate the life of our late Lord Bishop Randolph George, who had served for 39 years. We're the capital city where, just over the road, the Umaniyana, recently rebuilt, that hosted the Conference of the Non-Aligned Foreign Ministers in 1972, which has been the first in this region. We're in a country where Kaituo Falls plunged to a depth of 741 feet in a single drop. Awesome. And my brothers and sisters, just pay an opportunity to visit the eighth wonder of the world. But to welcome you this morning is none other than the son of the soil, Mr. Andre Griffith. Andre had been a Guyana scholar. He paid his dues in Guyana. He served at senior levels at the Statistical Bureau, at the Guyana Sugar Corporation, at the Guyana Water Inc., and also served as an Assistant Commissioner General of the Guyana Revenue Authority. Currently, he is a member of staff, senior member of staff, and interim executive director of CARICAD. He's been with CARICAD for the last 7 years. I have the honor to invite him to give the welcome remarks.
It is a pleasure and a privilege to be in a position to deliver these opening remarks for the 34th meeting of the Board of Directors of CARICAD. In doing so, my first task is to extend sincerest thanks to the government and people of Guyana for agreeing to host this important event, and I must publicly recognize the excellent administrative arrangements that have been made, outdone probably only by the warmest of hospitality, for which Guyana is deservedly renowned. We're meeting here in Georgetown, where in August 1967, almost 50 years ago, senior officials of the Commonwealth Caribbean territories gathered here to deliberate on the form that our regional integration architecture would eventually take. And in delivering the feature address to those officials, the then Prime Minister, the late Fox Burnham, had this to say in relation to how our regional integration system should be fashioned. He said, and I quote, "There can be no doubt that it cannot function without a secretariat that must have access to or be responsible for an institute of applied research which can mobilize a wide range of professional skills." And he went on to say that heavy demands will be made on skills and expertise, especially in the fields of development administration, where at an individual level there's a shortage in the territories. And finally he said, obviously provision will have to be made for advanced training and applied development technology. That was in 1967. Some 13 years later, which is lightning speed in terms of implementation in our community, as we've come to learn, we saw in June 1980 the establishment of the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, in Bridgetown, Barbados. and the objectives of the treaty establishing CARICAD exhibit considerable congruence with the thrust of policy that was outlined by the then Prime Minister. We see this among the stated treaty objectives, which include, and I quote again, to obtain, analyze, publish, and distribute information and data on the administrative aspects of development, stressing the importance of transfer of technology, thus aiding to eliminate the isolation which might exist among the various national administrative efforts which are being carried out in the region. Other objectives in our treaty exhibit similar congruence with the vision then communicated to the assembled officials. For completeness, Mr. Chairman, I'd add that in addition to a secretariat and the Institute of Applied Research in Development Administration, the then Prime Minister also is identified as essential for regional integration, a regional development bank. So those three critical elements identified half a century ago, today the question may be asked, with a CARICAD? Because even among the greatest of what I would term the CARI-skeptics, few seriously question the need for a secretariat, albeit perhaps in modified form, and almost none would question the need for a development bank. So even the role and relevance of some of our newer institutions, such as the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, and the Organization for Standards and Quality, those are well understood and appreciated. The court has made itself famous, I think, in grasping the nettle of free movement, for which it's renowned, but it has also delivered several significant judgments with respect to governments having to satisfy the obligations to render non-discriminatory treatment to firms that are trading in the single market. And even the Organization for Standards and Quality, some years ago in this very room, I witnessed what was expected to be a contentious trade dispute between two member states, resolved by a simple request to CrossQ to implement or to come up with a standard for the goods in question. So these institutions, in some sense, deliver something that is very easy to appreciate in terms of its value. We in CARICAD trade, however, not in such direct goods or services, but in probably the second and third order effects of administrative reform. And by definition, our contribution is going to be contributory and not attributary, and it will probably only be recognized several years after the interventions have been done. So we're among 27 institutions and associate institutions of the community. And the website of the CARICOM Secretariat says that heads of government have called for a review and rationalization of the community institutions to ensure that they remain fit for purpose and to create an enabling environment for coordinated management across the regional architecture, integration architecture. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, it is instructive that one of our member states has recently established a commission to inquire into the extent to which they have benefited from participating in the Caribbean community. I believe that it is clear that there's a mood in the community which says that we're taking stock and we are looking to see where we are with respect before we go forward. So I just want to say a couple of quick things about CARICAD and what it's been doing in this regard. I had the privilege of attending the 37th Conference of Heads of Government, the opening a few weeks ago here in Georgetown, and my recollection is that at least 4 out of the 6 heads of government averted to challenges associated with the free movement of people, of nationals in the community. And the Secretary General in his opening remarks indicated a specific administrative intervention where he said that training of immigration officials, border officials, needs to be accorded priority. Mr. Chairman, it's to our detriment that we at CARICAD keep secret the fact that together with the CARICOM Implementing Agency for Crime and Security, we implemented a program for training of border officials with impacts concentrating on security, and CARICAD educating border officials on the practical ways in which they had to give effect to the provisions on the revised treaty with respect to free movement. In fact, CARICAD was the agency that led the production of the first manual of administrative procedures for the free movement, which guides public servants in actually carrying out their obligations under the treaties that their respective countries have entered into. And for good measure, we also produced a plain English guide for citizens of the community that told them how they may go about accessing the benefits that were conferred on the treaty. I think I'd stop there with respect to the integration, Mr. Chairman. We just recently concluded an exercise with one of our member states where we produced a food production strategy, which, when implemented, not only would speak to the issue of food security in that member state, but also to the issue of facilitating healthy lifestyles through consumption of fresh foods, which is important in what has been identified as a strategic issue for our community, which is the reduction of chronic non-communicable diseases. So I hope that I've said enough. If there perchance is any kind of skeptic in the room, to convince people of what CARICAD has delivered and what we have the potential still to deliver. And so with those few remarks, Mr. Master Surveys, I just as I open by thanking the government and people of Guyana. I now express my thanks to the small staff at CARICAD who worked tirelessly along with you to pull off the administrative arrangements for this event, which I trust will be successful. I also wish to personally extend our collective appreciation to our recently retired Executive Director, Mr. Jennifer Astafan. I certainly would not be in the position to deliver these remarks today were it not for her mentorship. And we intend to hold a meeting of the Ministers of Public Service later this year, and I think that's a fitting occasion at which we can recognize such stalwart service. So, finally, Mr. Chairman, I would say even as we celebrate the leadership past, I'm looking at a specific direction in the room. Even as we celebrate the leadership past, we unreservedly embrace that which is to come. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your indulgence in listening to these few remarks and welcome you to the 34th meeting of the Board of Directors of CARICAD. Thank you.
I'm delighted, as Chairman of the Board of Directors of CARICAD, to be here in beautiful Guyana to share brief remarks at this opening ceremony that actually precedes the business sessions of the board meeting. First, and once again, let me express our gratitude to the Government of Guyana for agreeing to host the meeting. We all know that the hosting of meetings of this nature requires the expenditure of funds and efforts of many people. We deeply appreciate the choices and sacrifices that were made by the people of Guyana in hosting the meeting. In that regard, let me express a special word of gratitude to board member Reginald Brotherson and his team for the tremendous amount of work that they did to ensure that the necessary arrangements were made in a timely manner. I extend a special word of welcome to members of the board or their representatives who are joining us for the first time. Welcome. I look forward to the new ideas that come with new perspective. My friends, we are often reminded that change is the only constant in life. CARICAD has been going through and continues to go through a time of great change. That is inevitable when an executive director who served for more than 10 years retires, as is the case with our recently retired executive director, Mrs. Jennifer Astafan. Let me place on record also a deep sense of appreciation to Mrs. Astafan for her service during a particularly challenging time at CARICAD. Her commitment should be accorded due recognition in a forum such as this. Our new executive director has been identified, and Devon will be making the official announcements later today, but welcome on board. It's a challenging task, but we have every confidence in you and your staff. In continuing with the theme of change and transition, this board meeting will also be marked by my passing of the baton as chair to another colleague, based on the principle of rotation. That is one of the decisions we will make during our meeting. We will also have a new management subcommittee. Clearly, a time of great change at CARICAD. We are all aware that times of great change can mean great uncertainty. it is our duty as members of the board to reduce the degree of uncertainty for CARICAD at this time of transition. In effect, we are required, in the language of the age, to reboot and refocus. We must do so in the context of the approved strategic plan for CARICOM member states. We must do so accepting that, like all regional agencies and institutions, CARICAD must continue to transform itself to remain not only relevant, but effective and accountable. The call remains for all institutions to do more with less. But change brings opportunity also. We can face the future with a sense of hope and confidence. We as Caribbean leaders must demonstrate confidence in our own regional institutions. There are times when CARICAD has suffered from the fact that although it should have been the first port of call for an assignment within its mandate and competence, it was not chosen. It leads me to the point that we must make sure that the CARICAD story of success is told more loudly and certainly more widely. Let us briefly remind ourselves that in recent years, CARICAD, apart from the points that Andre was making, CARICAD has successfully implemented many projects and programs, including greater use of ICT in Caribbean parliaments, a regional e-government strategy, a charter and implementation guide for Caribbean public services. We have executed pioneering work on the Regional Administrative Tribunal, planned and staged 3 Public Service Commission conferences, and staged a ministerial conference in collaboration with CLAD. CLAD, our Central American counterpart, in which ministerial representatives from 8 Spanish-speaking countries participated. In addition, CARICAD successfully completed a range of in-country assignments in member states. We, as a new board, need to do our part not only in governance, but, if you'll excuse me for making this plea, for the necessary financial resources to be provided for CARICAD. Thank you, Frankie. And we must promote our institution as a first option for transformation assignments in member states. The need for a renewed and reinvigorated CARICAD is clear, and the inherent opportunity lies before us. In closing, let us as board members do all we can to meet regularly, deliberate carefully, and take good evidence-based decisions. Let us make the case for CARICAD at all levels, local, national, and regional. Financially, of course, we do need to make contributions on time to ensure that our renewed and reinvigorated CARICAD team, led by our new executive director, is able to provide services in line with our lofty expectations. I am in a position as chair of the board to know that this time of transition has been not only protracted but challenging. I wish to place on record my personal appreciation to all of the CARICAD staff, especially Rosamund Warrington, Angela Eversley, Franklin Michael, and Raphael Greaves, for their patience, professionalism, and commitment to CARICAD at this demanding time of change and transition. I thank Interim Executive Director Andre Griffith for his outstanding service during this period, and also the extremely worthy members of the Management Subcommittee, including Reggie Brotherson, Alison Forte, Philip Dalsu, and Stanley Reid, who have contributed very many hours of their valuable time over the past months as we have worked with the CARICAD staff to bring us to this point, this platform from which we reboot and refocus our collective efforts. My friends, I invite you to join me in recommitting to CARICAD as the staff and the Management Subcommittee has done. Let us all do our part to maintain and enhance the record of success already enjoyed by CARICAD. I look forward to a successful 34th Board of Directors meeting at the Caribbean Centre for Development Administration, and I thank you all.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to greet the Caribbean countries present here for this 34th meeting of the Board of Directors of the Caribbean Centre for Development Administration, CARICAD. The government of Guyana is extremely pleased to have you here in Georgetown, since the efficiency of the public service is an issue that is very high on the agenda of our administration. And there are initiatives presently being unfurled to address the deficiencies in the Guyana public service. Our government has been in office for just over a year. We met a public service that has been demoralized for many years. The public service had been undermined by the political directorate and tainted by what had grown like a cancer, systemic and pervasive corruption. On May 21st, 2015, a mere few days after he took the oath of office, President David Granger announced that our administration would establish a Guyana Public Service Staff College to ensure that public servants are equipped and inculcated with skills and knowledge to carry out their functions professionally. A commission of inquiry headed by the renowned Professor Dr. Harold Lachman was appointed to inquire into the current operations of the Guyana Public Service, and it has made recommendations to develop a more effective and efficient public service. Against this background, the government of Guyana welcomes you, the members of the Board of Directors of CARICAD. For us, CARICAD is a valuable resource for experience sharing as we seek to implement the recommendations of this commission. Over the 36 years of CARICAD's existence, and this is the literature I've read, Guyana has received significant help in its efforts to improve its public administration and delivery of public service. Guyana benefited in often small but always critical ways from its membership in CARICAD. I was informed that CARICAD helped in building capacity at the Guyana Public Post Office Corporation, Guyana Post Office Corporation, and the Guyana Water Incorporated in the wake of the merger between GAIWA and the Georgetown Sewerage and Water Commissioners. Interventions by CARICAD in other Caribbean states have impacted on accountability, good governance, and openness. More recently, we benefited from the CARICAD CARICOM Impacts, as Mr. Griffith alluded to, a program geared to train some of our immigration officers in certain aspects of border security, and equally important, in understanding and applying the provisions of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas with respect to the rights of citizens of a community under the regime for the free movement of skilled CARICOM nationals. We also benefited from CARICAD's expertise to produce a strategic plan for our civil defense commission to address comprehensive disaster management in all regions of our country. Those of us who experienced the great flood of 2005 would no doubt remember the initial shortcomings in response and would fully appreciate the value of a fully prepared disaster agency to rescue and help the hundreds of thousands of our citizens who reside in low-lying coastal and riverine communities of our country. Today, our Civil Defense Commission has been transformed and has met every challenge, whether from flood or drought, with confidence and purpose. Guyana notes with interest the vision of CARICAD, with some justification to be the model of organizational excellence and the premier catalyst for institutional change and development. This vision is shared by our coalition government for the public service of Guyana. Our vision is for the Guyana Public Service to be transformed into a professional institution that will serve the citizens of Guyana with integrity, impartiality, and objectivity, and for the public servants to be loyal to the government of the day of whatever political persuasion. In this regard, we note the relevance of CARICAD's work in the provisions of its draft charter for public service, and I quote from the section: "Public officers shall at all times be mindful of the responsibility of elected officials to be accountable to citizens through parliaments, and shall undertake to faithfully and impartially serve and advise the government of the day," unquote. The underlying principle guiding this draft charter had meant nothing to Guyana a mere year or so ago, and decades before, when key public officers such as permanent secretaries entered the electoral and political fray as party candidates and held party posts and positions. Since then, and more recently, Guyana has tried to restore the integrity of the public service, not without accusations of political and racial discrimination, when those who have opted for to be in the political hustlings find themselves in difficulties, and to rebuild public trust and confidence in this vital institution. Since we need support from CARICAD in promoting human resource management and development for what the Lushman Commission recommends as, and I quote, efficient and effective implementation of government policies and programs, and to discharge government's responsibilities, we still and we reaffirm our commitment to CARICAD. Guided by CARICAD, Guyana aims to develop and sustain a strong leadership and government framework within the public sector of the Caribbean community. Towards this goal, the government of Guyana plans to establish a public service staff college. The mission of the college is to develop dynamic public servants by improving their capabilities to serve the public sector without fear, favor, or prejudice through the design and delivery of a wide range of needs-based, quality training and development opportunities. It is our hope that the college will also produce a cadre of public servants who are capable of presenting to their ministers the product of organized thoughts and collective experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Chairman of the Board, CARICAD's draft charter provides, and I quote again, public entities shall, as far as is practicable, undertake to harmonize administrative and regulatory procedures in order to give effect to a single regulatory space for the optimal facilitation of regional economic endeavors, unquote. If harmonization of administrative procedures in various sectors is achieved regionally, then Guyana's Public Service Staff College can indeed serve not only Guyana, but the entire region. Mr. Chairman, Guyana also hopes to benefit from the expertise developed by CARICAD in matters related to ICT and e-government. CARICAD's role, supported by other regional and international institutions in promoting e-government as a vehicle for public sector modernization in the Caribbean region, is recognized. Guyana is currently working to design and implement an e-government strategy, and as we are mindful of the digital divide that exists between and within the administrative regions of our country, currently, internet and broadband infrastructure is concentrated on the coastal region, with sparse and expensive connectivity options in the hinterland and remote communities. Private telecommunications companies have shied away from providing internet services and telecommunications to these communities because of the difficult and varying terrain, economic status of the majority of the residents, mostly poor, and the perceived low returns on investment. Our government sees the implementation of countrywide e-government as critical to our development. We are cognizant that the widespread adaptation of the use of the internet and information and communication technology will fuel this development, and our planned provision of ICT hubs is intended to provide e-government services to all remote and hinterland communities. This project focuses on advancing human development and empowerment and community development through community-based organizations. The project will also involve the provision of hardware devices, internet connectivity, and access to information and educational materials that will transform learning and how citizens in remote and hinterland communities go about their daily lives and make them sustainable. ICT, as you all are well aware, is dependent on the availability of high-quality and cost-effective telecommunications infrastructure. We have therefore started to liberalize the telecommunications sector to allow for greater competition to benefit the people of Guyana. Just over a week ago, the National Assembly approved a landmark telecommunications bill, which is a pivotal prerequisite for progress on this front. The telecommunications liberalization has been hailed as the best initiative so far to position Guyana into the future. Your board, sir, is meeting in Guyana in the month of July, when Guyana co-hosted the 37th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community. The responsibility for providing host country arrangements was assumed by the government of Guyana after our sister state of Dominica was unable to shoulder the burden alone, as she still reels from the tragic effects and consequences of Tropical Storm Erika. I'm informed that the directors of CARICAD, the past and the future, hope to convene a Ministers of the Public Service conference to be held in the near future. And as proof of our continuing commitment, as we showed during the CARICOM Heads of Government, I can say to you now that the government of Guyana stands willing and able to once again serve as your host to this important regional endeavor. For now, and with these few words, always these few words with me, I once again welcome the Board of Directors of CARICAD to Guyana and wish you a successful and productive meeting. Thank you.